The illusion of progress, why representation without power fails. Black women. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me today at this TED event. I stand before you humbled and electrified, carrying forward the revolutionary insights of Jackie Johnson, a visionary whose work has fundamentally transformed our understanding of what true progress looks like for Black women in America. Jackie isn't just an advocate, she's a truth teller who has dedicated her life to peeling back the comfortable veneer of surface level diversity to expose the harsh realities beneath. Her unflinching analysis has forced institutions across this nation to confront an uncomfortable truth. Symbolic representation without economic power is merely the illusion of progress. We live in a time of apparent contradictions. Headlines celebrate historic firsts with triumphant language: the first Black woman CEO, the first Black woman Supreme Court Justice, the first Black woman Vice President. These milestones deserve recognition. They matter, they inspire. But beneath these celebrated achievements lies a troubling reality that Jackie Johnson illuminated with devastating clarity during our conversation. Here's the counterintuitive truth that might shatter how you think about progress. Despite visible gains in representation and leadership positions, Black women are experiencing deeper economic and professional setbacks now than they did even during previous national crises. In 2025, nearly 87% of Black women report worsening economic conditions, an unprecedented spike from just a few years ago, with many feeling their wages are falling behind rising costs at an alarming rate. This challenges the common narrative that increased visibility automatically translates to improved outcomes. The assumption that seeing more Black women in prominent positions means Black women as a whole are doing better is not just flawed, it's dangerously misleading. It's a comforting fiction that allows us to celebrate symbolic victories while ignoring the fundamental inequities that continue to shape millions of lives. Let me be absolutely clear. We've been measuring progress with the wrong metrics. We've been celebrating symbolic victories while fundamental economic and structural inequities not only persist but deepen. We've been mistaking representation for power. This isn't about diminishing the importance of representation. It's about recognizing that representation without economic power, without structural change, without systemic transformation is ultimately insufficient. It's about understanding that true progress requires more than seeing ourselves reflected in positions of prominence. It requires dismantling the barriers that keep the majority of Black women from accessing economic security and professional advancement. Consider Tony Towns Whitley, who in 2025 became CEO of Science Application International Corp, making her one of very few Black female CEOs among major federal contractors. Her appointment was celebrated as a breakthrough moment, and indeed, her individual achievement is remarkable. Towns Whitley faced an industry dominated by white male leadership with limited pathways for minority advancement. Yet, through persistence and strategic advocacy, she rose through the ranks. Under her leadership, SAIC implemented inclusive hiring practices and internal mentorship programs aimed at elevating diverse talent into leadership pipelines. The company saw measurable improvements in gender diversity across management levels, a rare achievement among top 100 companies surveyed in 2025. Her journey highlights both the possibility of individual achievement and the persistent institutional inertia that makes such achievements exceptional rather than commonplace. Her success inspired other organizations to reevaluate their own diversity strategies under new federal scrutiny regarding workplace equity. But here's a critical insight. While Towns Whitley's individual success is worth celebrating, it exists against a backdrop of persistent underrepresentation. The number of Black executives, especially Black women, in top positions remains disproportionately low across industries. Individual breakthroughs, while important, haven't translated to widespread advancement. This brings me to a second key insight from my conversation with Jackie Johnson. The economic resilience of Black women is being tested like never before. The majority of Black professional women feel more economically vulnerable today than at any point since 2020, highlighting persistent inequities despite broader conversations about diversity and inclusion. The Spring 2025 poll, surveying thousands of Black women voters, revealed overwhelming dissatisfaction with America's current direction, particularly around economics, education, and healthcare. Respondents cited rising costs, outpacing stagnant wages, fears about access to quality education, and diminishing faith that existing systems serve their interests. Years long trend lines showed mounting frustration dating back before COVID instability, but recent spikes reflect compounding effects from post pandemic recovery policies failing marginalized communities. This isn't just about perception, it's about lived economic reality. What makes this particularly troubling is that it's happening simultaneously with increased visibility of Black women in prominent positions. The disconnect between symbolic representation and material conditions couldn't be more stark. It forces us to ask, what good is a seat at the table if the house is burning down around it? But Jackie Johnson didn't just highlight problems, she pointed towards solutions. This brings me to the third key insight from our conversation. Collective advocacy fuels sustainable change. Organizations led by and for Black women showcase how multi generational sisterhoods can drive both immediate support systems and long term structural change. Dr. Shaven Arlene Bradley leads the National Council of Negro Women, MNCNW, as president and CEO during a time when cultural erasure threatens core aspects of Black life, including economics and history. Founded by Mary McLeod Bethune in 1935 amid Jim Crow segregation laws, NCNW has evolved into a multi generational force confronting contemporary issues head on under Dr. Arline Bradley's stewardship. Facing political rollbacks on civil rights protections alongside efforts to erase historic spaces like BLM Plaza and confronting declining faith among younger generations regarding future prospects. Dr. Arlene Bradley expanded NCNW's presence onto over 100 college campuses nationwide and fostered intergenerational mentorships focused on advocacy training. The results speak volumes. Membership growth among Gen Z students seeking sisterhood and service opportunities, sustained relevance after nearly 9 decades through adaptive programming. NCNW has maintained organizational vitality across generations and positioned itself as an anchor institution, defending against both overt policy attacks and subtler forms of cultural erasure. This example illuminates something profound. Progress doesn't come from individual achievement alone, it comes from collective power, from organizations that build infrastructure for advancement across generations, from communities that support and elevate each other. The grassroots organizing campaigns led by local coalitions formed alliances demanding bold policy changes. These groups centered lived experience rather than abstract statistics. They elevated national conversation around specific needs facing working class and professional Black families and shifted some legislative priorities toward targeted relief measures. These campaigns demonstrated power when collective voices moved beyond being heard toward driving agenda setting processes themselves. They mobilized record numbers around midterm elections and secured meetings with policymakers previously inaccessible. This is what real progress looks like, not just individual Black women breaking barriers, but collective movements creating structural change. Not just representation in existing systems, but transformation of those systems themselves. So, where does this leave us? What do we do with these insights? First, we need to recalibrate how we measure progress. Representation matters, but it's not enough. We need to look beyond symbolic victories to material conditions. We need to ask not just how many Black women are in leadership positions, but are Black women as a whole experiencing greater economic security and professional opportunity? Second, we need to recognize that individual achievement, while important, cannot substitute for structural change. The first Black woman to headlines matter, but they don't automatically translate to improved conditions for the majority. We need both individual breakthroughs and systemic transformation. Third, we need to invest in collective power. Organizations led by and for Black women have been driving change for generations. They deserve our support, our resources, and our recognition. Fourth, we need to center the experiences of those most impacted by inequity. The spring 2025 poll revealed that Black women themselves have a clear understanding of the challenges they face and the solutions they need. Their voices should guide our policies and practices. Finally, we need to embrace a more nuanced understanding of progress, one that acknowledges both achievements and persistent challenges, one that celebrates breakthroughs while continuing to push for deeper change. As Jackie Johnson so powerfully articulated in our interview, this isn't about diminishing the importance of representation. It's about demanding that representation be accompanied by real power, by structural change, by material improvement in the lives of Black women across economic and social spectrums. In the words often attributed to Fannie Lou Hamer, nobody's free until everybody's free. Individual success stories, while inspiring, cannot substitute for collective liberation. Visible representation, while important, cannot replace economic power and structural equity. I stand before you today not just to share ideas, but to ignite action. The data is clear. The stories are compelling. The path forward requires more than nodding in agreement. It demands that we disrupt the comfortable narratives that allow inequality to persist. So I challenge you, when you see a first Black woman headline, celebrate it, then ask what's happening to the economic security of all Black women. When your organization touts diversity numbers, applaud them. Then examine who holds actual decision making power. When you witness individual success, honor it. Then commit to dismantling the systems that make such success exceptional rather than expected. True progress isn't measured in symbolic bursts, it's measured in economic security, in structural transformation, in collective power. It's measured not by who breaks through the ceiling, but by whether the ceiling exists at all. The time for comfortable illusions is over. The time for real progress, that transforms systems, not just statistics, is now. And that progress begins with you, with me, with all of us refusing to mistake representation for power, refusing to accept symbolic victories as sufficient, refusing to stop until every Black woman in America experiences the economic security and professional opportunity they deserve. The question isn't whether we can create this change. The question is whether we have the courage to demand it. I believe we do. I believe you do. Now let's make it happen. Thank you.